Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Ryan, the Rigs of Death Metal. Today my guest is Shayan of Trivax and Iblis Manifestation Podcast. What's up, dude?
Yeah, doing great, man. And it's absolutely my pleasure to be here. I do apologize in advance for anyone watching this. I don't know if you're going to do a video for this, but I absolutely look like shit because I've been recording for the last 8 hours and, my brain is slightly fried. But I think that's probably a good time to have a conversation related to those things, which I know is what you wanted to do.
It is the absolute best time, and lucky for you, this is the pretty much a video only podcast right now. So
Fuck yeah. We got the moneymaker in there, yeah?
sure. Well, because this is, the gear is, I think, the main reason why a lot of people tune into these, and then the rest of it's my own nerdy curiosity. But so right out of the gate, let's go with the guitar setup. Are you still playing that really sick V from Abhorrent Guitars?
Yeah, man, that's the one. The V from Abhorrent. When I say I've been recording for like the last 8 hours, I've actually just been playing on that thing specifically. And man, it's a workhorse. One thing is that I give Alex a lot of credit because. When it comes to like custom made guitars, you always kind of have that little bit of apprehension at the back of your mind. It's like, oh, is this going to be as reliable? Is this going to be as much of a workhorse? Because I prior to that for years I used my LTD Eclipse, and that thing that's been on fucking loads of stuff. It's been on stage with me. Well, a lot of times, probably maybe looking into three digits, I would imagine, in terms of the number of shows I've played with it. And yeah, so I'm used to having a guitar that's just reliable, but this thing has honestly impressed me so much. Just like everything about it is perfect for me. Just from the sound of it, from the specs, I can list the specs here for you if you like,
Yeah,
and
sure.
and yeah. So basically, so for the guitar, I'm gonna have to read it out for you, so just so I don't get anything wrong. But it's a three-piece quarter sawn maple neck through with black laminates, limber wings, and ebony board. Okay. And then we've got black matte lacquer finish with white binding, luminlay side dots, so it's got them bits, where if you put your torch into the
Yeah,
neck and then it actually lights up, pretty fucking cool. And then of course it's got the Trivax sort of the trident inlay at the middle of the fretboard, so it's the middle part of our logo, the I and the V. It actually looks like a kind of like a trident piece, it's been like that. That's the second variation of our logo, which we've had since 2018. And 25.5-inch scale, full C carved neck, and yeah, man, it's just like the whole thing is just absolutely crazy. And then it's got bare knuckle warpig nick, sorry, bare knuckle warpig nickel covered bridge pickup, and um,
okay.
and it's yeah, and that thing is so fucking loud. When I was recording, it actually picked up the sound of the click track from my headphones when I
I love
wasn't
it.
playing it, and yeah, it's great. It's awesome. Obviously, especially if you want to fuck around with feedback and stuff like that, which in
Sure.
Trivex we have a lot of those kind of moments on the live shows, where we just let the guitars ring for a little while, before we do the free times and stuff. So we got lots of parts that like aren't actual songs, but we just kind of jam them out, which I've
Hmm.
always been a huge fan of, almost like little bit of like a Pink Floyd approach to black and death metal in a way,
Sure.
and and we improvise a lot. Obviously, a lot of Metallica influence as well because they do those kind of free times and things all the time, So
Sure.
yeah, and this is a guitar that kind of lends itself beautifully to that kind of setting. And yeah, what can I say, man? It's a beautiful piece of art, and it's just nice to look at, if you like set it down and then you just like look at it. That's kind of like good enough, and then when you play it, it's kind of the bonus, if you will.
Right. The bare knuckle war pig. Do you know if the one you have is it the Alnico based or the ceramic based one? Just out of curiosity.
I have absolutely no fucking idea. Now that's a question for Alex, and I'm
Gotcha.
gonna be straight up with you, man, and to all the listeners. I'm not as much of a gearhead as people might think I am. I'm kind of one of those people, I have ideas and I know that these ideas need to manifest into reality somehow. And then there are people who will help me, whether it's the producer or someone like Alex, who I've actually learned a lot from just working on this kind of guitar project together because it wasn't like I told him something and then he went and built it and then he came up. He was like updating me, asking me for my preferences all the way throughout the process, which is
Mhm.
why I think it turned out so cool. And yeah, so yeah, I have no idea which one of those it is, but I know it sounds good.
Yeah. It
So what's the difference actually? You tell me. I want to learn. So what's the difference between those?
Sure. Well, I had a Alnico War Pig set and a guitar that I had that I sold a while back. Um, have you ever played or got to compare like a Duncan JB versus a Duncan Distortion? Uh,
Yes, I think I have actually. Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
basically the same pickup, just one's ceramic, one's Alnico. Alnico tends to be a little bit warmer, a little bit
Right.
more rounded off, a little bit cleaner, and then ceramic tends to be a little bit grainier, a little bit brighter. You know,
Okay. Okay. Well, in that case, then it's possible mine could be ceramic, but again, I'm not too sure, because it has
sure.
like even when I'm listening to just the clean tracks, it almost sounds distorted. I say almost, part of that is my
Hmm.
own style of playing as well. I'm not one of those, even if I'm in the studio or even if I'm recording at home or wherever it is I'm recording. I play my guitar the same way I play it live, which sometimes means that, oh, it might be a little bit sloppy or whatever. And I frankly don't care because to me, I don't want a watered down version of my performance to be immortalized through my music. So I still headbang like a motherfucker just recording at home. And, a lot of people could say, oh, that's not efficient. I don't care. I want, to me, when you're recording music, even though it's just the sound that you're hearing, to me, it's like it's a part of your soul that gets captured into the recording. So to me, it's very important to make sure that I am living and breathing the music as I record it, And one thing that I can definitely say for sure is that today has been a good exercise in that. But the whole recording project, so I don't know if it's too early to say this, but you know what? I'm going to throw it out there anyway. But we've just been recording the newest Trivax album, and I think that might be the first time I mentioned that publicly. And it's been very, very, very special. And part of that has been when I've been recording, I've just been fucking losing my shit over every single song, and the songs really call for it as well. Like it's nothing like what we did before.
Yeah,
And yeah, I don't want to go into too much more details about it than that, but yeah, I
sure.
just have. It's just I have my own philosophy of it. I don't like watered down approach to this particular style of music from any aspects of it, really.
Yeah, black metal is such a unique genre.
Mm.
Um, and I've heard other people kind of wax poetic about it, but so I'll try not to get too out into the weeds on it. But it's it's very similar in my mind to punk or hardcore, in
Mm.
that the intent and kind of what you put behind the notes matter way more than the notes themselves.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things. It's almost easier to explain if you have a guitar sitting in front of you playing it, but I think you get what I'm trying to say here anyway.
100%, man. Listen, brother, I'm wearing a Morbid Angel shirt right now. To me, Morbid Angel is technical punk rock. Okay. And
I like that.
yeah, technical punk rock with like a mix of LSD and maybe a bunch of steroids as well. Which this is just perfection, really.
Sure.
And to me, it's like there's that spirit that kind of resides in this form of music, that you can't replicate it. I think a lot of bands, I mean, Trivax is a fairly new band, even though originally we formed in 2009, and then that somehow is fucking 15 years ago. We're still very new, okay? You know, we're very new in the grand scope of things. Even if we were a band that was born in, like, I don't know, if we were formed in like early 2000s or late 90s, I would still say we're relatively new. Um, but I think that the thing that a lot of bands are missing is that they're too focused on chasing the sound and the tone and the different things, you know, which is obviously valuable. That's a vessel for how you want your music to come across. But also, maybe what's more important is the attitude and you know, and how you play it, how you strum the guitar strings, you know, and then your tone starts from where your finger touches the fretboard. And how do you hold it? Do you hold it because you want the notes to be a certain way, or do you hold it because you got a fucking point to prove, you know? And that's much more relatable. I know this is ad nauseum for people who've listened to me, but I had the absolute honor of having the man himself, Tom G. Warrior, on Iblis Manifestations a little earlier this year. And he said this thing that I keep coming back to. And he said that heavy metal is originally an attitude. And I fucking love that, because you want to talk about tones. That's the guy with
Oh yeah.
probably in metal the most unique tone anyone ever has. And he's the first person to say that the reason why it sounds the way it does is because of the way that he plays it. You know, that there are these amp simulations, there's all these different tones, and then there's the Marshalls, all these things that he can use to get that sound. But originally, it starts from his intent and the attitude that he has when he performs. And I think that kind of, if he's saying that, that sets the standard for everyone else too, I think, you know?
Absolutely. And of course, you would mention Tom Warrior. I remember spending way too much time online and like trying out different pieces of gear and chasing that tone specifically because it. And for me personally, I got into Celtic Frost through the Monotheist album, and just
Yeah.
you know, I mean, age thing, right? I think they had brought back Headbangers Ball for a while, and the Dying God Coming into Human Flesh video was playing all the time,
Yep.
and it was to that point, it was a different kind of heavy than what I was used to. Like I
Mm.
was into death metal and black metal by that point, but this was like completely different. I'm like, what in the fuck? Why is this so uniquely heavy? And
Oh man, I think that might be one of the heaviest albums of all time, and it may very well be Celtic Frost's best record. I know some people might get their knickers into a twist about it, as we say here in the UK, but I actually think that that was the best they ever did with Celtic Frost, because it had such a clear intent behind it, and the sound of the guitars almost sound fucking broken, and I love
yeah,
that. It's so heavy, it sounds like it's breaking all the time.
yeah, it set a very high bar. And it's almost one of those records that it's kind of hard for me to try to describe or classify it if you haven't heard it already.
Mm,
And there's been very like even some of the Triptychon stuff that he's done later on, some of it, I mean, it's very much close to that.
mm,
Um, and then maybe the band Absent in Body. Um,
okay.
it sort of hits notes of that same genre of heaviness, but man, it's so rare to find something that hits that same just that same note or whatever.
You know, what's really funny is, and I hope he wouldn't mind me sharing this part of our conversation, but so after I released the podcast episode with him, I went to see them maybe like a few weeks later, and then this was at the Fortress Festival in the UK. And then, you know, I got the chance to sit down with him for a little while and talk backstage. It's really funny how he said this, you know, and then you know, the subject of Monotheus came up, you know, and 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 then I said to him, I said, yeah, only you could have pulled that off with those single notes, man, you know. And I just said it is such an original album. And then he, in his Swiss accent, just said that, well, we ran out of ideas, so we started doing the single notes. I was just like, that's so funny. That's absolutely brilliant. You know. But yeah, super unique album. Yeah, yeah, I love it.
But pulling back from nerding out on Celtic Frost a little bit.
Hmm.
What let's go back to your gear a little bit here. Amp wise, what's kind of like your go-to for amps, whether it's studio or live, if it's
Yeah,
different at all?
yeah, it is a little bit different. Just because for a long time with Trivax, we actually played as a three piece, and it's only in the last, I think, just over a year where we've actually finally brought in another guitar player. So and I will answer your question about amps, but this is a relevant part because I do kind of approach it a little different live than I do on the record. Okay, and it depends on some of the songs as well, because some songs I've written as a three piece, and then some of the songs I've written as a four piece. Sometimes there's like fucking 10 guitar layers on there,
Hmm.
and I'm a really really big fan of doing multiple tracks of my guitar. So for example, um on the newest Trivax album that we're recording, not only I've quad tracked the rhythms, I've also quad tracked the leads as well, which was a real fucking pain in the ass to do.
Yeah,
But
I'd say.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, I pulled it off, and that obviously requires a different kind of sound than what I would go for live. Because if I use the same kind of distortion that I use live on the record, and then there's like 8 tracks all playing different things, it would sound like shit, basically. I mean, you would get a cacophony of sound, but then you would kind of lose the definition of the notes. And to me, that's why I'm writing these songs, so you can hear the notes that we're
Yeah.
playing. Um, and yeah, so live, I always go for a PV. Okay, I got usually like a 6505, maybe 6505 plus if I've got access to that. I don't own one myself, but like we've toured with them before, and that's always my go-to. And I always have a very specific range that I have it, that suits us both for the three piece and also the four piece, but also I do make some adjustments. Like for example, if we're playing as a three piece, I have a little bit more mids. Whereas if we're playing as a four piece, then I kind of tone it down a little bit. But I'm not afraid of using mids live at all. I think it's actually a really integral part of the black metal sound and the tone. And yeah, that's pretty much it, man. In the studio. So what did we use for the last record, Eloah Burns Out? So for that one, we used the Randall head, actually, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, we used Randall because that album I got it reamped in Iran because I wanted to capture the air of home. I couldn't go there in person, and obviously sound is is the vibrations of air moving. So that's why I I sent it off to some of my friends who've got like an underground studio there, but their
Mhm.
equipment's actually not bad now that they've been able to import it from like Turkey and all these places. And yeah, that's where we got it reamped. So it was the Randall head. I forget exactly which one. I did have the model, but then also a PV 5505. So that's the sound that you hear on Eloah Burns Out. On this new one, we haven't fully decided yet, but I'll probably be going for maybe a mix of PV, then maybe a Marshall. But I also really do like angles as well, so it just depends on I work with our producer, Sam from Ritual Sound,
Mhm.
and he usually knows how to make my sound come out the way that it's supposed to, and I kind of just liaise with him a little bit. And
Yeah.
it's an area that when it comes to the production of an album, you kind of want to give your producer control for that. And the reason for that is because, yeah, you want to have your own sound and everything, and you can have that. That's the producer's job to get that sound out for you. But you also want to accommodate for every other element that's on the album as well. And you want them to get a sound that actually sits in with everything else rather than end up with basically and justice for all type of a mix kind of thing, that only like fits
Yeah.
like two people's, instruments on the record. Does that make sense? So that's kind of how I like to approach it. On the record, I give actually a lot of the control to our producer. Live, I just go with, PVs, and that's about it, really.
Perfect. Any kind of cab preference, or do you have much of a pedal board going on?
Yeah, so I have this extremely complex pedal board that's got a tuner on it. So yeah, but no,
Yeah.
like yeah, I've started to mess around with that a little bit, but I'm a bit of a pedalophobe, if that's a thing, because to me pedals, I can see that it's a little bit like I don't know. I can see it's a having pedals on stage has more to do with being a hobby than it does about the sound, I think. And I mean that respectfully because it is a hobby that's fucking expensive. It's like getting tattoos. You get into it and then, you get one arm covered and it's like, well, I need to cover the other arm too. You got the reverb. So now you need to get noise gate. Now you need to get compressor. Now you need to get, oh, this new company just released this, and I'm a little bit, I don't know. I'm scared. I'm happy to admit that I'm scared that one of the cables will go off, and there's so much that goes into booking a show that I'm basically too afraid of something going wrong, and I hate it, and yeah, that's why I've never really built a pedal board, even though I have lots of pedals at home, and I do actually own a pedal board. I've just never used it live because I'm scared it's gonna go wrong.
Gotcha.
Have you ever heard that kind of response from anyone before, where they say they're too scared of something going wrong, or am I just kind of unhinged
No,
for
no,
thinking?
it's very common. Honestly, sometimes it's kind of refreshing, especially
Right.
because my day to day anymore, at least like anytime I'm online, I'm just overwhelmed with gear this and gear that. So it is kind of cool to even myself, I'll go like just plug straight into something, that's at least like decently high gain, just to not think about parameters of a bunch of different pedals and things like that. Not that I don't, I mean, I've, got a stockpile of too many pedals, way too many.
Mm,
Um, and, I was messing with my Kemper earlier, programming some presets and stuff for a jam session that I got coming up. And as fun as that is, it's very distracting. Um,
mm,
Sometimes you just want to plug in and just play and not think about adding
mm,
color and texture and all these other things. And especially live, sometimes, especially if your intent is going for just pure raw emotion, not this other stuff. You're not trying to replicate all the outboard gear and post processing from the album. You just are going for an experience and it's just meant to be as raw as possible. Pedals
mm,
almost even a noise gate almost kind of contradicts that in a sense.
mhm.
I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and I'm not against it by any means at all. Like everyone else in my band uses it. Our bass player, I think he would be a good guy to have on here as well because he's done a lot of studies and searches, and he has a fantastic bass sound. Our Sully, our guy, and I think that for me, I've just been a little bit stubborn with that. But what I will also say is, obviously, I haven't only ever recorded for Trivax, so yeah, that's always been my main project. I'm one of my main focuses in life. Um, and what I have done in the past, and this might be a little bit interesting, maybe for people listening, is that for the band Lavison Jangal, okay, I don't often talk about the fact that I record for them, but I'm basically I'm a big part of the band. I'm not the only person there. The band is actually my friend's project, technically, who's still in Iran, and that's very radical fucking black metal is extremely radical music, to the point that I almost wouldn't consider Trivax to be black metal in comparison to that. But Trivax to me is more like a holistic approach to metal and extreme metal, and it's powerful in a very different way. Lavizanjangel is just pure fucking terror, which is appropriate for it to come out of the Middle East, of course. But for that band, what I do for the guitars for that one, I actually run it through multiple distorted amps. And so if you listen to it, it sounds fucking abysmal, and it's perfect for the music that we're doing because, like for example, on the last record that we did, it's called Tori Kiomarg, which translates to darkness and death, which has got a pigeon on the front, which I actually took it was a pigeon that was electrocuted outside my gym, and then I just took a picture of it with my phone, and then now it's printed on a CD everywhere. And that for that, yeah, I know, right? For that, and then what's funny is, sorry, a little bracket here in the booklet, there's like a collection of like dead birds and dead animals that this Polish guy found, and then he said, I want to send you guys this because it matches your style. And then we just included lots of like pictures of like dead birds in the booklet.
That's awesome.
And yeah, I think so. But yeah, it's obviously it's a very grim album. It's one of the darkest things I think we ever put together, and both lyrically and just the concept. It's horrible to listen to, and that's great. But when you listen to the guitars, I think there's only like two guitars per track, which is very like minimalistic compared to what I do with Trivax. But then those two guitars, each one of them is running through at least like 2 amps, both with distortion and then like distorted pedals on top of it. And yeah, it has a crazy fucking sound. And then for that, what I did was I used the Line 6 Pod Farm 2, so like really basic demo, kind of like a distorted sound. But then I ran the sound of that. Sorry, man. I'm in a fucking funny mood, as you can tell. I ran the sound of that through through like an actual simulator, then with like compression and then other stuff. That's why it's just. Yeah, if you listen to that album, it sounds fucking horrible, but it's, I think, perfect for what that style of music should sound like. Because, one thing that I always think, not to go on too much of a tangent, but like I was thinking this just a moment ago when you were talking about pedal boards and different things like that. I'm always like, so you're trying to make it sound good, but then also you're, with this style of music, you are kind of trying to make it sound horrible as well. So at one point, do you pull the rein in and stop it being horrible? At one point, are you too concerned with the quality of it being like accessible? And then how do you find that balance? And to me, I think if you really want to make music that's totally fucking unhinged and radical in that way, I almost feel like the quality just stops mattering, and then you just want to make it sound as insane as possible, which is what I try and do in Lavis and Jangal. So when it comes to Trivax, because Trivax to me is like black thrash death metal, it's not just black metal, musically speaking, but then the
Sure.
intent is more black metal. So yeah, it's cool to kind of explore these avenues, but I just kind of think, like I don't like holding back. I think if you want to go for it, to anyone who's listening, and it's like, oh, what's the best sound? I think if you really want to go for it, just fucking go for it. If it doesn't make sense, that's fine. It's art. So
It is interesting. It does seem like different black metal bands have different approaches to a similar idea. Um, like, yeah, there's obviously some of the older waves doing the whole like necro style of recording where they're going for a specific kind of fidelity, right? Like,
Mhm.
what kind of garnered the reputation for like black metal recordings not being very good, or by certain standards. Um, and then like some of them musically, I mean, the music is abrasive, but when you kind of boil it down, it's a lot of power, like trim picking power chords for a lot of them, and then blast beats, and then vocals that are super, super distorted because they're blowing a mic out or something, right?
Hmm.
So pretty bare bones, right? Then there's other black metal bands that have gone kind of like the opposite, where fidelity wise, the production's actually pretty, you know, pretty decent by normie standards, right? But musically, very dissonant, ugly, abrasive chord voicings. Um, Usually still blast beats because blast beats work for everything, right? And
Sure.
very very gross vocal. Take a band like I don't know, like Portal or something, right? Like
Oh yeah.
musically it's almost indistinguishable what they're actually playing, right? like, um, but
Yeah, on some songs. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and some of them, just playing chords that you can't exactly place. Like, what are they playing? Because it becomes a wall of sound, and they just have taken the time to figure out what notes sound ugly when they are played together.
Well, what I love is that there's that video that they've got of what's the name of that song? Glamophanol or something, where he looks like Pyramid Head from Silent Hill.
Yeah,
And then they're all just fucking going through these notes. And then you look at what the bass player is doing and what the guitarist is doing, and it almost looks completely different. And it's like, are you guys just making this up on the spot kind of thing, you know? Well, obviously,
yeah,
it sounds fucking sick. I really like that band actually, but it's just kind of like you think like, are you just kind of making this up as you go in, Which, if that was the case, I think that would be really cool. But also, if it's not the case, then it's really impressive that they have those kind of structures in place. I love that. Both, whichever way it goes.
sure. I I can't help but think I don't know any of those guys' like musical background or anything like that, but it does feel like it has that avant-garde jazz kind of approach where there might be some improvisation to it, but they have like almost just more of a skeleton in mind, and they have room to embellish, but it's definitely much more of a texture thing than it is like a melodic or harmonic kind of idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And then there are parts where they kind of rein it back a little bit, and then you
Hmm.
kind of just have this like nauseating kind of thing. It's the same with Deathspell Omega as well. And I love those parts where it kind of gets reined back, but still maintains the dissonant. Obviously, Deathspell also have a lot of the melodic parts as well, which I'm also a very huge fan of. But in the case of them and Portal, I think that a common sort of like when it's all chaos, 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 and then it kind of strips it back for one moment, and then you kind of get to hear you kind of feel the walls go down, and then you hear this ugly ass fucking melody, and then just like this nauseating kind of sound. And I really like those moments as well. And then obviously that those sort of sections feel a lot more deliberate, So yeah, I guess it's all about the dynamics really to make it work. But like you said, it's about the texture, but also what's important about that is you also don't want to be playing the wrong notes, or rather the right notes, because then you don't want it to all of a sudden accidentally sound happy in the middle of a really aggressive section either. Okay, which is harder to avoid than people realize as well, I think.
Oh, for sure. Um, there have been times where I've tried to write something like maybe very gore guts inspired,
Hmm.
and you'd be surprised how many times where like just trying to sometimes I'll just play with intervals trying to make up a chord because like
Mhm.
I have a bit of a theory background, but I'm pretty lazy about applying it. Um, but
Which probably
sometimes
works in your favor, by the way, because then it keeps it spontaneous.
sure, but sometimes you're just playing with intervals, from note to note, and you're like, no, too major sounding, too happy, and you just keep sliding notes around until you find something that sounds messed up in a good way.
Yeah,
Um,
well, you think of Slayer's like Rain in Blood. Couple of riffs in that. if you play them slowly before the riff is complete, it's kind of sounding a little bit happy. But then, like for example, like the first of the
Oh yeah,
if you only bring it up to that point, it sounds happy as shit. But then that at the end kind of like fixes the rhythm, and it's the same, like on other songs that they have specifically, actually, or like Ditto Ed from that album that everyone hates. That's a song that if you play the verse really slowed down, it sounds happy as shit. But then in the song, it sounds super aggressive because of the type of drums and stuff that there are, But yeah, it takes effort to make sure that the song remains evil, if that's what you're trying to do. Is what I'm trying to say.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And kind of speaking of the spectrum of black metal, uh, Trivax is fascinating to me because and I would also maybe lump like 1349 into this same uh I don't know, middle ground where it's not on the far spectrum of being like very melodic like Dissection. I think Dissection being probably, I guess the furthest spectrum would be like, I don't know, Death Heaven or something that's not even really black metal at that point, but you get what I'm saying. So if Dissection is the most melodic and then the most chaotic would be just, I don't know, maybe some of the more experimental Mayhem or something, like where it's just very,
Catharsis, perhaps. That might be a good example.
yeah, there you go.
Hmm.
Then I think you guys, this is the two bands off the top of my head, not that you all sound alike, but that you have found a cool middle ground of experimentation where you can have raw primal black metal moments or ugly moments, but then also could have very cool dynamic and even melodic parts. Um, can have like cool thrashy anthems, can have kind of quiet, creepy moments. You can have just pure blasts with, very primal Marduk esque, you know, black metal attack kind of riff.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I think that's actually a very accurate analogy, just purely musically speaking, of course. I think
Sure.
Trivex's music, and that's not to say that the other bands that you mentioned don't have this at all. No, no, no. But just specifically talking about us, there's a lot more to Trivex, I think, than just the music and the sound, which kind of brings us back to that whole intent business that
Hmm.
we're talking about. But specifically, musically speaking, yeah, I always felt that too. Kind of, I think our natural inclination was to have a kind of like a middle ground of having all of these kind of different moments, and actually, like you're saying, this is what's cool about doing this is that what you're saying perfectly describes our next album. Like, and then obviously, your only reference is what we've released previously with LOL Burns Out. And then I don't know if you've heard the first one, but not many people have, so that's fine if you haven't. Um, and yeah, that's really interesting for me because now I'm thinking like, oh yeah, shit, that next one is even like more fucked up because it's like all the songs are different. Like each song is like a genre of its own almost. And then
Interesting.
that's one thing. You'll kind of notice that with LOL Burns Out as well, really. I mean, there's a little bit more of a unison between Azrael, Alpha Predator, and Against All Opposition, but still, even then, those three songs are really different to one another. And I think I've always kind of had that, where it's like I'm not afraid of letting a song have its own personality and have its own feeling rather than, oh, this is like a cut and paste approach to riffs. And I think part of what did this for me was actually, I know this sounds silly. I don't think it's silly, but part of what I think allowed me to treat music in this way was psychedelics, you know that opens your mind a lot to a lot of different things. And when I was experimenting a lot with that around 10 years ago, um, that made me think of music differently because then I was listening to Fields of the Nephilim whilst I was on LSD. and I mean, fucking powerful experience. You know, anyone who's not done it, I'm not recommending that you do it, but if you do, or if you have done that combination, you will understand exactly what I'm talking about. Particularly album 2 and 3. Actually, the first one's applicable too, and then you kind of realize that, songs and music, you can treat it like a journey. And since then, I think I've become actually increasingly sort of disheartened whenever I feel whenever I listen to a new band, and I feel like these songs are just fucking riff boxes. I fucking hate that. That's a real turn off to me, because to me a song is like an alchemical process that has its own unique relationship with time that you go through. It's almost like your own roller coaster that you design. And then every time you listen to it from start to finish, you go through your own roller coaster that you built. Okay. And then you get to kind of go back and say, actually, you know what? This bit before the roller coaster drops, I wanted to kind of build up a little bit more before it drops, and then maybe like a little bit of a pause. To me, I equate songwriting a lot to that kind of an experience, and that's perhaps a lot of the diversity of the music of Trivax comes from, because it's an emotional experience that's taking you through all these different pathways. And with this new album, every song is its own roller coaster, but then each song has its own different theme as well. So some are a little bit more horror and disorienting, some are extremely melancholic and so on. And yeah, I don't know how we got to this part of the conversation, but dynamics. Oh yeah, so you were talking about like us having that middle ground. To me, I'm not afraid of first of all expressing myself. Okay, I don't create music to fit into a scene. I don't create music to appeal a certain way. I create music because I want to create an emotional experience, or at least a thought-provoking experience, although the two can very much be intertwined, because your thoughts can create emotions, and then your emotions can create thoughts, and the two work. The two are very much intertwined, and to me, that's what I'm interested in. And I think that I think we're doing a good job of it so far. But yeah, I don't do riff boxes. Yeah.
Well, I love hearing that you have such a personal connection with each song that you write individually, because for a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with this, for a lot of people, it's strictly just this is just a fun outlet. This is them. It's not. It's I always equate extreme music to horror movies, where you've got on the one camp, like the fun Friday the 13th slasher, where it's just like about, kind of campy, cheesy fun, like, or body
Mhm.
count type movie. Then you have the other more thought provoking, the elevated horror movies, maybe something like Hereditary or Midsummer or something like that, where
Mm.
the horror is a bit more existential and a bit more thought provoking.
Well, tell you what, I don't want to interrupt your flow there, but actually that's really perfect, because think of it like this. This is why dynamics matter in music. Imagine if you had a horror film that was jump scare from start to finish. Okay? You would get bored of that, right? Now equate jump scares to, I don't know, blast beats. If you have a song that's just that from start to finish, okay. But by minute 4 or 5 of the song, it kind of becomes a bit like, okay, well, just give me something a little different. That's why you need the little girl, in the white dress to kind of like, it's like, oh, that's the calm, peaceful, serene thing, but there's something eerie. And then on this other side, there's the demon that's kind of rearing his fucking head. And then you need dynamics to make a horror film work, and I think metal's exactly the same. You need that kind of thing, and that's not to say you should force it. Nothing wrong with, I don't know, like a straight up Marduk song, or maybe even something like Pseudogod. But I think that's unintentionally perhaps why we do things the way that we do them, if that makes sense.
On that same note, do you think that that might be why Mortician uses so many sound samples is because their music is just kind of one note, one dynamic, so they have to break it up with something?
Yeah, yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. I think
Because I love it. I mean, I'm not
yeah,
knocking
yeah, yeah.
it.
No, I love listening to that band, especially in the gym.
Oh
I
yeah,
think some bands as well. I mean, listen, man, this is the beauty of music. That's what's brilliant about it. You can do anything and everything, and you can reach any kind of mood. It's like a library where you could, where each book that you pick out is gonna make you feel a different way. Okay. I mean, let's not bullshit around. And that's what music is. It's a library of emotions. So, if you're in a mood where, I don't know, you want to go to the gym and hammer some fucking weights, then you want to grab a book that's going to make you feel like a badass. So then you go for Mortician, then you go for Nails, and then you go for Angel Corpse and all these bands. And then if you want to be more retrospective, then you go for different stuff. And then it's like, it's all very relevant, and I think what I've always tried to do with Trivax, this is not like it's not like a fucking PR marketing thing or whatever, but for me, I think I always wanted to create a space in the music where it makes you content with only listening to that band because that band already gives you what you need from the genre, you know?
absolutely. And it something I wanted to add. It's always a really cool feat anytime a band can make can make a diverse album, right? Like it's a whole slew of songs that are unique to that album. It's not like interchangeable with the rest of their discography, right?
Mm.
But they can make a wholly unique album, a diverse album that doesn't sound like a mixtape. There's still a thread of identity through all the songs. Like you can still tell who you're listening to. Because
Yeah.
and it kind of goes to having songs, whether they're like you said, like a riff box or not, if they are
Yeah.
well constructed and actually, there's movements to them, there's dynamics, there's thought, there's themes. Um, and again, sometimes just pure blast beats are fun, but and I fucking love Mortician. I know I'm just kind of picking on him right now, but uh, a lot of their songs and albums are pretty interchangeable, and that's fine. Same with AC/DC, right? Like all of that stuff's very
Yeah.
interchangeable. Um, and I think that there's a space that we kind of need some artists and music like that too, But
I agree. I
but
agree. I'm not saying that that's not valuable either.
yeah,
Like I said, that there's a reason why grindcore is successful. It's not my favorite genre of all time, but I understand why it's good because sometimes you just want to stick something in your ear that's just fucking, from start to finish, like no fucking melody because you're not in the mood for melody. You're just pissed off or you just want to, I don't know, you just want to annoy your neighbors. Like if
yeah,
I wanted to purposely annoy my neighbors, I wouldn't put on Pink Floyd.
right.
I'd go and put on probably the last Levies on Jungle album because that's like one of the most extreme things I think ever. But like that's the kind of thing you wanna go for. And I also love the idea of weaponizing music in a way. Like when they
Sure.
were trying to, like, I think it's so, like when the US were using Metallica's Enter Sandman to torture some I think Iraqi prisoners or something, and it's like, you could have gone for way more fucking,
Right.
deranged stuff, should have played them some Tatum Blood or something on repeat. And or I don't know, that's still probably quite mild. There's so many different things you could have done with that, but you could have played them the Shags. Have you ever listened to the Shags before?
Think so.
Man. So there's an album. I think is it called The Philosophy of the World? So there's this group of I think there were these American sisters. I think there was three of them, and their father basically like locked them up and forced them to become musicians because he really wanted them to become famous and become musicians. And as a result of it, they came up with this album that's the most torturous piece of shit you've ever fucking heard in your life. It is so painful. You know, like I think if extreme metal bands want to sound shocking and horrible, they've got nothing on this album. It's so bad. It is so fucking bad. Like the rhythms all over the place, the lyrics are fucking horrible, and it's an album that's it's like actual ear torture. If you have a musical ear, listening to this album is the equivalent of putting toothpick underneath your biggest toenail and kicking the wall. And yeah, I recommend people to check it out. But you know, that's kind of the thing. Like if they wanted to torture the Iraqi soldiers, they could have gone for a lot more fucking extreme stuff than Enter Sandman. But
I
just
love it.
saying,
I love it. I have to look it up now.
please do. Yeah.
Um, let's kind of throw it back a little bit. What was the catalyst that got you into music and playing guitar?
Hmm. That's a good question because I think it's kind of one of those things that was maybe somehow always meant to be. I'm trying my best to answer your question without going into the idea of the multiverse and how we've already lived this life before and all those kind of things, and that we all have our own role to play in this particular universe, although the time only moves forward. So once it's happened in this one, it's already happened. Ugh. Yeah.
Oh, I love shit like that too.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's that I think like this 24/7, and sometimes I have to remember not everyone thinks like that, and otherwise I just overwhelm people or sound like a crazy person, which by the way, I'm happy with both of those outcomes also. I'm perfectly content with that. But yeah, so I think with music, yeah, so I always just had a big interest in it since I was a kid. And it was just something I was really into. I mean, going as far back as when I was like 5 or 6 years old, there was like an old VHS video of me wearing sunglasses indoors in Iran and using like a really small badminton racket and playing air guitar on that to no music at all, actually, because in my mind somehow I was really serious, like as if like I was already born to do that. You know, even when I was 3 years old, I used to grab like a small microphone and I used to run around and do lip syncing in front of our guests at home, you know, and that's a very young age to be doing something like that instinctively, I think, you know, which again, you know, I can get really deep on that, but just on a surface level, that's still a very unique thing, I think, because there was no influence around me. There was no one else doing that. I, for some reason, instinctively always just gravitated towards that. That's just what I was like. And I think I knew even when I was younger that I was different in some ways. But then what music did for me, and by the way, when I say different, I was never like a, how do I say this without sounding mean? I was never a loser, if you will, you know, but I was just different. I always kind of set my own, I was always set in my own ways. I did things my way. And, you know, I was also very curious as well. And for me, um, you know, like I always created my own cliques in school and in high school. I always like I had my own circles of friends that was separate from like what all the other kids were doing, you know. And I think I've always been this way of I make my own path, and music became the biggest weapon for that, you know. And again, the idea of weaponizing music to me that became the way of right now this thing is giving me the voice that I didn't have before. Now this, you know, like I think that even when I was like 9 years old, I was already writing lyrics for my own songs. You
Mhm.
know, the first piece of lyric I ever wrote was for a song called Defeat. First, I mean, like, that's pretty, like, I was 9 years old when I wrote that. I
Wow.
wrote a song called Defeat, and the song was basically saying that, defeat makes us stronger and it makes us learn and it helps us go forward. And and it's only when you accept it that it really becomes defeat. And the rhythm that I had in mind, I've never shared this anywhere, FYI. The rhythm that I had in mind was the old version of Triple H's song before Motorhead actually covered it. Because the one that Motorhead did, the game,
Yeah.
that's actually a cover of a Jim Johnson song.
Okay.
Um, but then I think Lemmy added the lyrics to it because before that it was just kind of like a instrumental, like
Mm.
and then I had that original version from like I think 99 2000 in mind. But then when I wrote my lyrics to that song Defeat, which obviously I never fleshed out the song, that's the kind of rhythm I had in mind, and it had like a chorus and everything. So I think music was just always meant to be. It's a language that existed in me since the very beginning. And yeah, so I saw a video of Metallica when I was 13 years old, and even though the volume was off, something about it just had me captured. And then I went and did a bit of digging and research after that, and then as soon as I actually listened to Metallica properly, it took me like a few listens because at first I was like, "Oh, what the fuck is this loud noise?" And then once I kind of gave it a little bit more attention, then within 5 months of that, I already had my first electric guitar, and I was already writing music pretty much like straight away. As soon as I got a guitar, I started writing music straight away, even though I couldn't play much at all. And here I am talking to you now after an 8 hours day of recording guitars for the next Trivax release. So there we go.
Did you ever receive any kind of private instruction or classes or anything like that, or have you been self-taught the whole way?
Yeah, also a very valid question. It's technically yes to both of those. So I had a private guitar teacher, Nima Alzar, and I credit him a lot for introducing me to black metal, actually, because up until him introducing it to me, I had no idea what that was. I only knew like Metallica and Death and Iron Maiden and like, those kind of bands. And even those bands, knowing them as like a 13, 14-year-old in Iran, when no one else has introduced them to you, is still like, that's a lonesome world, should we say. Maybe it's different now with the internet being more prevalent there now. I don't know. But yeah, yeah. So yeah, I had Nemo, and he taught me some of the like the basic blues stuff. He was trying a lot to be theoretical. I was just having none of it. And he would teach me like theoretical stuff. Oh, you have to finish this blues book, and then it had some good stuff in there. Like some like bendy blues, like fucking 12 bar shit and all
Yeah.
that stuff. Because everyone in Iran is very methodical. They're like, oh, you have to learn this properly. And I was just like, fuck you. And I was like that my whole time I was in Iran. Everyone is like, oh, you have to do this properly. You have to be polite. You have to be nice. And I was just like, fuck you all. I hate you all. Burn and go to hell. I want to do things my way. And yeah. So that's just what I'm like, very un-Iranian of me in a way, I guess. But you know, uh, yeah, so what happened was that to answer your question is I found 911 tabs. And then as
Oh
soon as I
yeah.
discovered that website, it was like fucking game over. I was like, oh, so you're telling me I can download all these Guitar Pro tabs of every band that I like? And then I think and then I started learning my own stuff, and then I started writing songs using Guitar Pro, and then like I just like that became my way of then being self-taught alongside having a private tutor, to the point that he was just like, yeah, you've gone and already learned what you wanted to learn anyway. So after a certain point we were just like jamming songs together. Like it wasn't the normal thing of him teaching me. I was just like, hey, can you play this song with me? Because it doesn't sound right when I play it on my own. And then that was our relationship until, it had to stop because I was failing miserably at school. And then my parents were like, yeah, what the fuck you doing? We're not going to support this anymore if you're not going to study. And then I still didn't study. I was just like, yeah, guitar only,
Double down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've always been like that, I think.
Well,
Yeah.
like Tom Warrior said, it starts with an attitude.
Yep, yep, absolutely. And then some.
Yeah, right?
You know? But the thing is, like, as I'm talking about all of this, like, I have zero regrets. I'm actually very happy. Like, obviously, with the years, I've matured as a person, but my who I am at core is exactly the same. Like, I recognize right and wrong, and I can tell that very well for myself. And yeah, if something doesn't feel right to me, I'm not gonna just go ahead with it to go with the flow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna speak up. If I have a problem with something, I'm gonna talk about it.
Well, to got two more questions for you. One, this is a gear question I kind of glazed over earlier. Um, for a lot of people, because a lot of people still actually try to learn songs by ear and everything. So just to kind of help people out that maybe want to be playing some Trivax tunes, uh, tuning and string gauge that you use.
Oh, that's a good question. Tuning is D standard. Um, so our first album was actually C sharp standard,
Hmm.
but I realized that kind of sounds shit unless you're playing Black Sabbath, Master of Reality. It doesn't sound right. So yeah, used to be that, but then we changed it to D standard with LOA Burns Out. We changed to D standard back in March 2019 because it was a very small show we played in Banbury, and it was actually our last show with our old guitarist, and that was the first time we played a show in D standard just to try it out. We tried it out at a small show to see what it felt like, and it felt really good. And then we were like, "Oh, okay, cool. Let's just keep it like this from now on." Then, so yeah, D standard. I don't know if I should give this away yet or not. Yeah. We might have some stuff in Drop C in the future, but that's in the distant future. Nothing worth noting right now. Um, yeah, string gauge. It varies which guitar I'm using and whatnot. Usually for me, I go 12 to 50, 54, sometimes 52. That's usually my string gauge. I always use the Darios. I used to use Ernie Ball, but I realized that I was kind of fucking going through them a lot.
Hmm.
And I started with the Darios back in Iran, and I kind of like a few years ago kind of went back to them, and I feel more comfortable with them. I like the sound a little bit more. I mean, they're both great. They're both high grade, high quality strings. So it's not like one's. I don't even know if you can say one's better than the other. But yeah, I just prefer Darius. I can't quite tell you exactly why I prefer it, but I just do.
No, I kind of made the same switch here in the last like year or two, going from
Hmm.
Ernie Ball to which I've played them forever just because they were cheaper. Daddario has a bit of a smoother feel to him. I don't notice
Yeah.
anything sound wise too differently, but they they feel good. Like,
Yeah, it's a very subtle difference, I think. That's why, like, you know what it is? Obviously, what I'm about to say is kind of a joke, but I think it's because, I might be mildly retarded, so it's the fact that the Darios have got colors, so I know which string is which.
oh
So when
yeah.
I, no, it's not that, but maybe it helps.
uh, the last question I got for you.
Yeah.
We always end these out with what is your Mount Rushmore or top four bands and or albums, whichever's easier to come up with on the spot.
Bands and artists.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Imagine, like, it's a good job I know what Mount Rushmore is. Imagine if I was like the average, like an Iranian person, from over there. What is Mount Rushmore? What are you talking about? Um, yeah. So I mean, first one's easy, Metallica.
Classic.
And I'm not. Yeah, it's always been that way. They were the ones that got me into it, and I still revere them highly. All four of them, I revere them highly as musicians. I know this will someone listening to this will be like, "What? Really? Yeah, yeah, really. All four of them. I think they're fucking legends. You have a problem, then like the half of the people who show up to fucking death metal shows wouldn't even be there if it wasn't for Metallica blowing the fucking doors off for everyone. So respect where respect is due. It's my approach. Second, I I know we've just been talking about them, and I'm not saying this just to be a kiss ass. I mean it, but I would actually say Celtic Frost. I think they play a huge role in my sound, my approach to music. There's a reason why we used to do a cover of Into Crypts of Praise like 11 years ago when we did our like first show in London ever. So they play a big role. Dissection, I would say, play a big role, which is hilarious because those two entities, the last two entities I named, do not get along whatsoever. But I can still be equally as inspired by them. And fuck, that number four is gonna be really difficult now.
It
Is this?
always is.
Yeah. So is this gonna be influence or just who I regard highly, or how are we looking at this?
I kind of leave it pretty open for whoever the guest is. You know, typically if they're important to you, they're also influential to you.
Hmm. Well, can you give me five slots? Then it makes it a little easier for me to finish
Sure,
it because the last two will be kind of equal.
sure. We'll
All
go
right.
five.
Fields of the Nephilim, and lastly, Depeche Mode.
Hell yeah. I've been on a Depeche Mode kick lately too. That's awesome.
They're the fucking best. I absolutely love that band.
They
Yeah. New and old and mid stuff. I like it all, actually.
It's like all the old stuff is classic and people that don't listen to the band know the classics, but man, some of the uh what's that one track? Heaven? Is it Heaven? I think
I
that's what
love that song.
yeah.
Fucking sick.
That's like my favorite song from them.
Like ever?
I think so. Like it's really fucking good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
But
from Delta Machine. That's track 3 of Delta Machine. That was like the
yes.
main single for it. They played it on like the Jonathan Ross show, and sometimes I slide away silently. It's fucking
Yep.
great. So
Uh,
sorry for my terrible singing, but yeah, fucking what a song. I absolutely that Delta Machine album, like the
mhm,
whole album from start to finish, is just composition and production fucking masterpiece.
for
Martin
sure.
Gore, hands down, might be like one of the greatest songwriters in the contemporary world. Like, there's none close to him. He's the fucking best. So good.
I will say of the classic, probably Policy of Truth. That would probably be
Oh
my
yeah,
other
yeah.
favorite. Yeah.
Man, the layers, the way the layers in the song intertwine,
Oh yeah.
and then you got that guitar that's just doing it,
Yeah.
slide in. It's fucking so good, man. Hell yeah. I love Depeche
Absolutely.
Mode a lot. One of my favorite songs by them is this is a little bit of like a more of like a sort of like a deep cut song, but there's a song called The House, and I think it's off of Black Celebration, and that song is beautiful. It's just like the melody and the groove and just the whole thing. That
Hmm.
so like one thing that I think I learned that I took massive inspiration from Depeche Mode and Trivax is the layering of stuff.
Hmm.
So a lot of times when I'm unintentionally layering different rhythms and different stuff, I think subconsciously I'm thinking Depeche Mode because they were the masters at doing that. And
Yeah.
they
I
still are.
totally see it.
Yeah, yeah, it's fucking great, man. I could talk about this all night. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, man, we'll definitely we'll have to do this again sometime when we have a little bit more time and we can kind of go into multiverse. We can go into layering songs. We can go into,
Bring it on.
you
Fuck yeah.
know, way out in the weeds on all this shit. But
Yeah, man.
is there
Absolutely.
anything well, obviously you're working on the new album.
Mm.
And I know you're kind of limited how much you can talk about it. Anything you want to plug specifically before we hop off here? Maybe just follow you on your socials to keep tabs on the new album or tour dates.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we have a lot of stuff going on. I mean, first of all, Ryan, thank you so much for the time, and thank you for having me on here, and thank you for listening to what I have to share, and the same to everyone else, who's tuned in so far. I hope it's been valuable conversation for them. And yeah, so for Trivax at the moment, we actually obviously we are preparing for the next album. We just recently signed with a fairly well-known underground label who've been around for 30 odd years, and an announcement for that will be imminent. So I don't know when that will be coming out, so I'll
Mm.
just drop the hint here, and then people can see it for themselves when it comes out. And then, yeah, once that's out, then we'll be gearing up for a new album release sometime next year, I would imagine. I have no idea in terms of dates and stuff, but I'm hoping we can get it out like as soon as possible, actually. And yeah, so that'll be happening. But in the meantime, if you want to hear a cool piece of underground metal history, particularly one relating to the Middle East, particularly relating to Iran, Trivax, we just released this compilation tape. I'm gonna see if I've actually got one here. Uh, yeah, so we released this tape. I don't know if you can see that. That's
Oh yeah.
Burning Fields of Hatred, and it's transparent blue, really pretty looking tape. And this
Oh,
has
that's
got
killer.
yeah, this has got an hour and a half of all of my recordings, and also the band in Iran. The old Trivax from around how many years ago now? 14, 15 years ago. So the old Trivax, it's got our rehearsal tapes. It's got all of my recordings for original songs, and perhaps next time I come on, I can talk to you about how I recorded some of these songs. 'Cause it was extremely primitive environment, and with like basically next to no equipment whatsoever. So if people want to check out something unique and rare that's not necessarily trying to impress you with the quality, but rather encapsulate the sense of nostalgia, but also history attached to the early roots of Trivax, and also the fact that every bit of this was recorded in a country that has metal completely illegal, and we could have gone into serious shit for it. Um, and we were of course only teenagers when we did this. So yeah, if you want to check that out, go and yeah, maybe listen to it first, and then if you really want to get the full experience, then you can get the tape, because I think the tape actually sounds great. Even though it was recorded like really old school digitally. I used to like
Mhm.
mix the songs using virtual DJ back then, and I used to record the audio using a shitty like video camera, and then I used to transfer the video to audio, and then
Yeah.
there's a whole process involved as to how I even recorded those songs back then. But yeah, it's just a piece of Iranian metal history, all recorded behind enemy lines. So people can go check that out. It's on our Bandcamp. I think we've already sold half of the copies. So if you want one, probably, act faster. But yeah, yeah, so there's that, and yeah, we got a bunch of shows that we're currently booking at the moment, but the rest of the year is going to be fairly quiet. So all of our focus is going to be next year for the obvious reasons. If you want to follow me on, I don't know, on social media and whatnot, my personal Instagram is that metal coach. I have the podcast Iblis Manifestations. I talk to cool people, but I also, ask serious questions, but also have deep conversations with people, not just about music, but about everything. Like you said, the multiverse and the occult and just life philosophy and all those things. We recently had Nasal Cometh from Aklis on there, and we got to have a very spicy conversation, which was fun. And yeah, that's Iblis Manifestations. And very lastly, I am also a fitness coach. I used to be something close to, I think. So I'm guessing if you've got American listeners, so I used to be around 260 pounds before, and I lost about 80, 90 pounds of that. So now, and then I kept it off as well. So now my job is to basically help other people do the same thing. So if you want a fitness plan, I want to get in good shape, and obviously that benefits the mental health a lot as well. So if you want to go down that route and need a bit of guidance, need a bit of support, need a bit of accountability, then just hit me up on my Instagram, or I've got all my details there on Trial by Fire, and we can get talking. And thank you all once again for listening to me ramble about things.
Awesome. And dude, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been an absolute pleasure. Um, Again, we'll have to do this again. There's still so much I'd love to talk to you about and pick your brain about. We didn't even get into all the fitness stuff. I love weightlifting too, and all that.
Cool.
And I've been on a weight loss thing. So yeah,
You
well,
have. Good for you, man. Happy to
thank
hear
you,
that.
thank you. Appreciate that. But
Awesome.
yeah, we'll hopefully I'll be even further along by the time we get to chat again, and we can just we like I said, we'll get out into the weeds on anything and everything. We'll actually allot time specifically just to ramble.
Well, how about this? And I'm going to say this whilst we're on air, as they call it. We'll do part two on Iblis manifestations. Sounds good?
Perfect. Works for me, man. I
Let's
appreciate
do
it.
it. Cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for checking this out, and we will see you next time. Peace.
Fuck yeah.